Hello, ICTforAg community and friends. It's actually our final main agenda section. I'm super excited. And we are finishing with an amazing person and talk from Sunja Bechat from WeRobotics and the Flying Lab Network, where they believe in the power of local expertise to sustainably and responsibly localize technologies to create actionable impact for climate action, development, and solutions. This is very special to me in Nigeria as a flying farmer who works regularly in the space. Sunja is going to walk us today, talk to us today about local first, a different way of localizing technologies on a grassroots level. Over to you, Sunja.
Thank you so much, Femi. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to be here today and to share our story of the Flying Labs Network. Thank you. My colleague behind the scenes is going to share some slides so that we can go through a number of slides. I will be talking first a bit about WeRobotics. We can go to the next slide if you want, just the focus of the session. Just giving you a short intro on WeRobotics, discovering what hides behind the power of local and our bottom-up approach to localization. I also want to share some real-world examples of our journey over the past 7 years of introducing and localizing drones, data and AI for social good in local communities. As it's ICTforAg, I still want to take a little excursion and talk about the technology. The main focus of this session is not going to be on technology, it's really on localizing drones and data, but I cannot be here and not talk about technology because we're all very passionate about that too. And then I want to close out with a Q&A and hopefully open discussion, even though you cannot talk back to me and to Femi, but please use then your chat to share your questions. We're really looking forward to also address your questions and just hear from your side also. So I'm really excited to give you a short overview of our organization, WeRobotics. So we're a social impact organization with 2 legal entities, one in Switzerland and one in the US. We have a nonprofit set up and we are fully digital and remote. So all our team, we have a small but mighty core team that is on 5 continents and that mostly works from their home offices. So why did we create WeRobotics just under 8 years ago? It is essentially because of 3 key facts. The first fact is that many challenges are growing at quite an exponential rate on this planet. This is a fact in many different areas, including food security, where new ways of addressing agriculture really are needed. Another fact is that there's many emerging technologies that are actually available and can contribute to solutions. I always say technology is not the solution, they're a tool and they can contribute to the solutions and they're already here. At the same time, they can create a lot of opportunities on an entrepreneurial level for the social good sector. And the third fact is there actually an important abundance of local experts that exist in the communities and in the local geographies that face these issues. But a lot of time, these local experts don't really have access, on the one hand, to the emerging technologies, but also to the opportunities. So we created WeRobotics to address this issue, which in essence is taking existing elements and just connecting them to each other. So not to focus in essence on the technology, but focus on who gets to use them and how do we actually connect local experts with emerging technologies and the opportunities that are out there. Can we go to the next slide? So for WeRobotics, we have kind of a dual mission. And as I said, we started just under 8 years ago, and it took us the first good 6 to 7 years to actually just focus on the first mission that we gave ourselves, which is to create a network that allows local experts to join and to be the voice of the space. Then we create an ecosystem of emerging technologies on the one hand, so technology partners, but also organizational partners where a lot of the opportunities lie. And the third part of our mission is really about social entrepreneurship. We want to take a social entrepreneurship approach to that and create and enhance local markets. This is our kind of way that we imagine to responsibly and sustainably localize technology for good. By doing so, over the first 6-7 years, we were able to make a lot of learnings, a lot of different challenges we met on the way. And it allowed us to document our work. And through that documentation, to actually create the model that we hope many other organizations, especially tech for good organizations, will adopt and adapt to look at localization from a bottom-up perspective, especially in the technology world where there's a lot of top-down, and adopt or adapt parts of our network for their technologies. Can you go to the next slide, please? So the exciting part to talk about is actually really the Flying Labs network. So that's the part you saw in our mission that is about the network and the platform for scale. And it's our approach to tech for good localization. So the Flying Labs network is a global network of independent knowledge hub that convene local experts in professional drone, data, robotics, and AI services for social good. So it's a lot of words in one short sentence, but the focus really of our technologies lies in drones for data acquisition, but also drones for transport, in farming, more and more also outlook on different robotic solutions, so ground robots in many ways, and then machine learning for a lot of applications that just help with data analysis. Our work and the work of the Flying Labs network focuses on anything that is tied to an SDG. So that's kind of the scope we give the network. So it's not a commercial network, but it's really a social good network. And in terms of geographies, it focuses on Latin America, Africa, Asia, and the Pacific. And we chose these geographies because if you look back at our why, it is really these geographies that in many ways miss the connections between opportunities, the best technologies, and access to opportunities and access to these best technologies. So that's why we chose our geographic regions to be more towards the south. So when we look at what Flying Labs do in many ways, and we can go to the next slide, please. So Flying Labs, in many ways, so they're knowledge hubs. So there's one Flying Labs per country, and we're going to go a bit more into the model in just a minute. But before that, to look actually what do Flying Labs do? So Flying Labs, in essence, do three things. They do projects with local and international clients, focusing on SDGs. So a lot, I would say, in most cases of the network, Flying Labs have about 80% of the clients are local communities, local governments, local corporations, local research centers, universities, academia. That's possibly one of the key clientele of Flying Labs. And then depending on Flying Labs, they also have some international clients, mostly in the academic and research space, and sometimes also more commercial clients that work on SDG-related projects in the geographies that the Flying Labs are in. So they have a strong focus on projects, and I would say more defined even pilot projects. It's really piloting newer ideas where drones can add value to work in communities, in ministries, and then allowing with the second activity the Flying Lab have is a lot on training. Then training local, for example, local smallholder farmers or local, a good example is in Senegal that recently just trained a number of park rangers for the Ministry of Environment to be independent with their own drones and really see drones as a tool that fully integrates into their existing work, just as an additional tool to their work. So a lot of focus of Flying Labs really lies in capacity strengthening on a local level. And again, capacity strengthening along, sometimes we'll start out with a pilot project, to just see if this is actually viable and if drones really can add value to that. And if that's the case, then moving over to training the local actors to be independent in the use of drones. Flying Labs also spent quite a bit of their time on advocacy on a local level for the ecosystem locally. So they create and facilitate local ecosystems, but also just advocacy, mostly again, not on technologies, but just on the value of local experts. Because sadly, in many of the geographies, when it comes to emerging technologies, ministries, government officials still think a lot of time that the expertise must come from somewhere up north, which is not the case, because the expertise really is in country. So to do advocacy on the power of local and local experts that are in so many ways more experts, not just of the technologies, but mostly on the environments they live in. So again, we work with Flying Labs on just about any kind of SDG. So there's work in agriculture, but there's also work in development, in urban city development, in disaster response, disaster management, disaster risk reduction, conservation, change, a lot of change detection for climate action, and a side kind of activity that all Flying Labs enjoy highly is to work with youth in their countries. So a lot of Flying Labs also do youth and STEM projects to share their passion with the technologies and hopefully inspire a lot of youth in the countries to follow careers in STEM. So that's a bit about the Flying Labs activities. But kind of the key focus that I wanted to touch on today is our model and how do we localize. And I'm gonna tell you a bit more about that in the next two slides. So first, let's look at like how does our approach and model with the Flying Labs network work. So I have put some key elements here. So the first one to possibly point out is the model itself is based on a franchise model. So Flying Labs join the network on their own demand through a social franchise license. There's a quite important vetting process going on before a Flying Labs joins, and about 50% of organizations that apply for a Flying Lab actually don't make it to the end of the process or have possibly still some missing elements they cannot fulfill, so they come back to us a year or 2 years later and are possibly able to fulfill those. So there's a social franchise per country, and it's then really based on collaboration in the country where a lot of Flying Labs are made up of more than just one organization. And that's another keyword. So Flying Labs are held by existing local organizations. Sometimes they're nonprofit, they're for-profit, they're academia, and all of that is actually good. So right now I'm sitting here with my colleagues of Côte d'Ivoire Flying Labs in Abidjan. And there, for example, a local for-profit organization that specializes in the agriculture space, and they're the license holders for Côte d'Ivoire Flying Labs. They joined the network quite early on, and they're really a good example on how Flying Labs will make their own income. So WeRobotics does not finance Flying Labs. Flying Labs are need and value-based. Again, we're working with technologies that should create value, and if there's value, then this is sustainable. A reason why we don't finance Flying Labs, but they actually finance themselves, again, through the activities that they lead in their countries. So they're fully self-financed and sustained, which then also gives them complete ownership and agency on what they want to work on. Again, the framework is around SDGs. So some Flying Labs will focus most of their work on agriculture. Other will focus their work more on climate action. Some of them focus their work heavily on disaster management, risk reduction, because that's the main issue in the country. And some of them focus on 2-3 topic areas at the same time. So it's really for each Flying Lab to decide what their focus areas are. And that goes very well along with the fact that it's need and value-based. Each country might have different challenges or different kind of priorities of challenges to focus on. And that then allows Flying Labs to really focus where they see need and value in the country. And I think that's possibly one of the key advantages of the Flying Labs is really that diversity from one Flying Lab to another. And how they then also can interact with each other and share their experiences and bring in their expertise whenever a neighboring country or even a Flying Labs far away across the planet on another continent faces some issues that are issues in the countries, but they don't have an expertise. They can call on each other and help each other out with their expertises. So sharing and collaboration really are the key values of the network. And WeRobotics facilitates a lot of that. Flying Labs create use cases, they create stories, we hold internal knowledge sharing sessions, and then there's sometimes just on-demand collaboration. Also, a good example is our colleagues in Uganda faced some disaster needs after a landslide in Uganda some months ago. It's something they never did. It's something they're not specialized in. Our colleagues in Nepal are the absolute specialists when it comes to landslides. This is possibly the #1 business, quite sadly, but that's the fact. So they went on a call with the colleagues from Nepal and got the whole workflows from them, the instruction on how to best acquire the data, what to look out in data analysis, what will be the best product for decision taking for the local responders after that. And it really allows them to actually be able to quickly gain new expertises, even if this is not the expertise, but this comes up in your country. Today, the network is present in over 40 countries. With the social franchise approach, the network grows organically. So again, it's not WeRobotics looking to set up knowledge hubs. It's existing local organizations who hear about the network and who see value for the countries and then contact us and go through that process to either join the network or possibly need to still add some expertise or partners to be able to join. And with this, we grow at about a rate, anything from 5 to 7, 8 new Flying Labs per year. We implemented this model in 2018. And before that, we did a proof of concept in 3 countries. So essentially from 2018 to today, we grew, the network grew from 3 to 40 Flying Labs today, and actually 41 next month, because a new one is coming on, and then the last one is going to join us for the end of the year. So we're going to close out with 42 Flying Labs. What's also important to note is that the social franchise is based on a yearly renewal. So each year we get the chance to have a discussion with each Flying Lab to understand, do they still want to stay in the network? Do they want to leave the network, which is absolutely a possibility too. For some of them, we had, for example, a Flying Labs leaving us 4 months ago. They tried for 4 years to make it sustainable in the country. Work is really hard for them to be financed because political setup makes it so that a social enterprise like a Flying Labs will possibly struggle. So they tried it for 4 years, they could not make it work, and they closed down, and that's fine too, because that's really the idea behind this, that it is need and value-based. If there's no need in the country, or if there's no value that can be generated and actually paid for, then unfortunately, the Flying Labs is not sustainable and the doors will close. And that's for us kind of a healthy growth, because each year we have about 2 to 3 Flying Labs possibly leaving the network and 7 to 8 coming on. So it's about a net growth of roughly 5 to 6 Flying Labs a year. And for us, I think one of the things that I personally am actually most proud of is that it's organic growth and that it just keeps on growing at a nice slow rate of 5, 6 a year, which makes it sustainable also for us as an organization to just integrate them the best way possible. But it keeps on growing, and that's really, really encouraging for us. So talking about us, so what is our role? What is WeRobotics' role in that kind of network setup? And just to possibly take a step back, and so we took the very conscious decisions from the beginning on to actually have 2 brands. to have the network and to call it the Flying Labs Network and to have a very specific brand for that. And then our organization having a different brand and a different name, because we really want Flying Labs to have that freedom. And we had interesting discussions with the network last year to see would they want to create their own legal entity to take over the network facilitation and take over from WeRobotics. And for many of them, it actually didn't pan out as such a great idea, because they really fear today they have full agency, and they say if you go back to kind of a more traditional network structure where there's a secretariat and then it become more to the top-down approach again. Today, we actually really like to have two different entities, one that focuses on supporting the network, and the other one, the network, where each flying lab just can concentrate on their own work in their countries. And it also pushes us, WeRobotics, to provide value. Because for us, as our clients are first and foremost the flying labs, so if we don't provide value, then this is a sign for us that we're doing something wrong. And having that kind of division between who facilitates the network and who's in the network is actually quite a healthy setup, we have learned. So what we do, again, we co-created the network and we are the network facilitators. So you saw our small but mighty team in the beginning. So about 1/3 of our team members are facilitators and coordinators of the network. They have geographic regions and they spend their days with just listening to Flying Labs needs, connecting them to other flying labs, documenting their work together with them that can be shared back in different formats, and just making sure that Flying Labs needs are met on a daily basis. Then one of our other key kind of areas of work is around capacity strengthening. So we have a number of internal programs. So we have also a small technical department, and we have internal programs that we then run with the Flying Labs, kind of the trainer programs in many ways, but then Flying Labs take these programs and implement them on their side to then train on their side. So capacity strengthening, also one of our key areas. Another key area that we added on about 1.5 years ago, as per demand of the Flying Labs network, was around M&E and storytelling. Flying Labs, as they're, again, self-sustained, actually putting their story out there and advocating for local expertise is important for their sustainability. So most Flying Lab members are engineers. They have a technical background, or they're specialists in one of their sector areas. So they're very good at their expertises when it comes to technology and creating value with data. They're possibly not the best storytellers, because that's a different talent that not everyone has. So they asked WeRobotics if we can put together a team that can support them in storytelling. So we have added a small team that takes care of shaping the Flying Lab stories in engaging videos, blog posts that are strong in their kind of setup. So we have both a visual and a written storyteller that supports Flying Labs in documenting their work. And then kind of the last part of our work is really around the ecosystem that we built for the Flying Labs network. And it includes, again, technology partners, so hardware partners, software partners, platform partners, but also organizational partners that then can drive opportunities to various Flying Labs. We ourselves also do some project and advisory services. And in many ways, like I said before, what we really want to achieve is also a localization, or I like to call it a glocalization model, because it's more of a local model that goes global, that other organizations hopefully will be inspired by and then can think about adopting in many ways. So that's kind of our key contributions to the network. I always like to call it, what is our secret sauce? And I think that's what really lies behind, in many ways, the success of what we do. So first of all, and I think most importantly, it's the bottom-up approach. It's really having that approach that if there's need and value locally, someone will join the network. And it is the network and Flying Labs that actually direct our work. They direct the support they need from us, and then it's for us to organize ourselves to get that support to Flying Labs. So that, I think, in many ways is the key success factor of the Flying Labs network and the growth. Another one is definitely co-creation. So we decided from the beginning on that anything we do is through co-creation. Want to add something new? Let's go co-create with the Flying Labs network. Today I'm sitting in Abidjan, and we actually are having our yearly retreat with right now here in Abidjan. It's with the French-speaking Flying Labs, and we had a full day of co-creation where once we sit together and look at the chat, want to learn from the Flying Labs, how can we possibly address this challenge work for next year based on everything for next today here in Abidjan or next week in Zambia. So we're doing this together with the Flying Labs. Then I would say one of the other kind of key success factors definitely is that we build on the existing. Like I said in the beginning in the why, so most things actually exist. It's not like they have to be created. There's local experts, there's technologies, there's opportunities. So it's really just about connecting. Sometimes I get corrected and say, I shouldn't say it's just, because it's still a lot of work, but it is about connecting and not reinventing the wheel in many ways, and just building on what is already out there is for us possibly one of the success factors that allowed to scale from 3 Flying Labs to over 40 in quite a short time. And then the last part is that the network really has a decentralized power kind of setup. And at the same time, we have a model that has a shared governance. So we have implemented 2 models behind the network, in essence. One that allows to localize, which is the social franchise model. And then we have built together with the Flying Labs also a joint and shared governance model that then holds Flying Labs accountable, not to WeRobotics, but to their colleagues in the network. Because we deeply believe that a network is only as strong as its weakest link. So the best way to address that is by knowing about weaknesses of Flying Labs and being able to address them together in shared governance, where then Flying Labs who are strong in some of these areas where others might be weak can collaborate and learn from each other how to overcome their weaknesses or how to become stronger. So these elements, I believe, are kind of our secret sauce that allowed us to get here today and to hopefully keep on growing at quite a constant rate over the coming years also. So I said in the beginning, I wanted to make this session about the model and about the local expertise and how this can be done. But I cannot come to ICTforAg and not get excited at least a little bit about when we talk about drones and data, what this actually means in the agriculture sector. Can we go to the next slide? So I just wanted to bring some examples along and take a small excursion to Flying Labs work in agriculture, just to give you 2 free examples or kind of groups of examples. So we can go to the next slide already. So one kind of key group of example is really data-driven farming. So many Flying Labs work sometimes with commercial farmers, but in many ways also with smallholder farmers on data-driven farming, helping farmers with understanding their fields better. So outcomes, data outcomes in many ways will be NDVIs, digital surface models, or sometimes just the orthomosaics. Here, this example was provided by our colleagues from Zimbabwe Flying Labs, who are possibly one of the strongest Flying Labs in the network when it comes to work in agriculture. So again, depending on geographies and depending on different Flying Labs, they will have a heavy focus on smallholder farmers. And some areas might be like here in Côte d'Ivoire, it's a lot of more the commercial farming also that they support. But even if it's commercial farming, the key work is always going to be about capacity strengthening. So strengthening direct capacity in the areas that the farmers or the cooperatives that run these farms can do the work themselves and are independent from Flying Labs to actually do the data-driven farming work. So that's one of the key areas. We can go to the next slide. Another key areas is in many ways topographic studies for different kind of challenges or questions. So assessments of plant health in many ways, irrigation models, just to understand what could be improvement areas of farms. So this example was provided by our colleagues from Malaysia Flying Labs, who have done quite a number of work on topographic studies in their countries. This example here you see is a palm oil plantation, and they pointing out some of the different elements they could see and then help with taking decisions on how to better improve farming and irrigation practices on areas like that. So this is also where sometimes work comes in with research institutes or with academia, where a lot of research is done around, for example, irrigation models or elements like plant health, where there's also research going on. And then the final area where drones are today heavily used in agriculture, and we can go to the next slide, is crop spraying in many ways for smallholder farmers. So it's also a bit for commercial farmers, but most of the work, again, with Flying Labs lays with smallholder farmers with an approach to much more precise spraying of their crops using drones. There's quite a number of Flying Labs who have this expertise and are then able to share with their colleagues and train them also. So for example, Côte d'Ivoire Flying Labs is the Flying Lab that has the highest expertise in crop spraying, and they have been training their colleagues in Cameroon, they're training their colleagues in other countries here in Western Africa on using drones for crop spraying. Sometimes the same techniques are actually used also for not just for crop spraying, I would say, to improve yield. But for example, the colleagues here from Côte d'Ivoire Flying Labs also helped our colleagues in Tanzania Flying Labs to use the same techniques, for example, to reduce insects like malaria protection in rice fields using exactly the same practices. So sometimes these practices can also be translated to other use cases. So in terms of agriculture use cases with drones, that's about the 3 main use cases that there are there. Then again, Flying Labs, we can go to the next slide, work a lot with stakeholders. So a lot of work lies actually in active engagement with government leaders, also on technology adoption. So that's the advocacy work they will be doing in terms of agriculture drone advocacy, and in many ways to show that there actually can be contextual innovation in the country and adaptation needed in the country, and just taking a copycat approach if you want, and have also an investment and discussions in investment in agriculture technology education. So also to have these discussions with government to not only invest in kind of the agriculture ministries, but also in the education ministries, by making sure that the talents of tomorrow are also trained properly. And our colleagues from Zimbabwe Flying Labs kindly shared also some of the key learnings with us of outcomes of drones and data in agriculture training programs. And we can go to the next slide. And these key learnings, apart from kind of the typical ones, which are reduced cost or higher yields, and in many times making better decisions, the key learnings that I think that are really important to kind of point out are also the learning that the drone technology a lot of times actually allows to leapfrog the infrastructure gap. So saying like, instead of having to invest in traditional farming equipment, actually already go to the next step and just jump over one technology and adopt a newer technology. And the one that I believe is really important to point out is that it really also allows to get young people interested in farming again. I think for a lot, especially in the smallholder farm space, it is very difficult work that is not very appealing to the younger generations in many ways. So showing new ways of farming, even in a smallholder farm context, with technologies really can interest and motivate youth to first pursue a STEM career and then come back and actually look at smallholder farming in a very different way. So that was my little excursion, and I have one last slide just as an example. We kind of looked at, so about 84% of flying labs are involved in training local communities, not all on agriculture. If you look at the example of Zimbabwe Flying Labs, they have trained in the last year over 100 young farmers, of which also quite interesting percentage of women. And they have seen that 12% of these 100 plus farmers trained had actually an increase in interest from young people to move into the farming sector again. So you see here, actually, they trained a lot of young people, and they really showed a keen interest in saying, like, actually, farming possibly could be an interest area for me too. So a very cool fact there. So after this small excursion, I want to come back to our main topic, and really the main topic, and we can go to the next slide, that is not about the what in many ways, but about the who and how behind. Can we make it to the next slide, please? Thank you very much. So like I said in the beginning, I really see technologies as a tool. And we made a small little study a little while ago with Flying Labs and check up on these numbers every other year. And if you look at like percentages that Flying Labs spend with technology, it's only about 50%. So if you look at all the projects that Flying Labs do across all sectors, about 10% of the time is spent with the drone itself. About 40 to 45% is spent with the data. That leaves almost half of the time that actually is spent with stakeholder engagement, stakeholder education, advocacy for critical thinking on the use of technologies. I think that's a really key area where Flying Labs are strong too. To say, fly a drone, to just fly a drone is possibly not a great idea. And in many ways, drones are not the solution. And to be critical about that and not just say, you know, like, wow, drones are such a cool tool, we can use them for everything, but to actually instill critical thinking in their stakeholders too, to really think, okay, here a drone can actually really provide specific value that other tools can't. And in this area, drones cannot really provide a value. And we see it sometimes in the farming context, just with different kind of crops, where crops a lot of times like maize, and just the use of drones and the data will possibly be at a higher cost than the higher yield than a farmer can produce. So why would you use a drone? If you cannot create actual value with the data, then possibly continue farming in many ways as it's done today is good enough. But if there can be value provided, then why not use a tool like a drone? So that critical thinking is something that Flying Labs foster in many ways with their stakeholders also, to really think about what is the value of actually using these kind of technologies. We can go to the next slide. So I wanted to come back and share a bit more about where the value lies, because that for me is an important word. It's all about value. Again, that's how Flying Labs can become sustainable for the Flying Labs network, and we can make it to the next slide. So where does the value lie? First of all, the value lies in local expertise. Can we have the next slide, please? So the value lies in local expertise and then the global connections. So again, the value most of the time actually does not lie in the technology itself. It lies in who gets to use the technologies. And in our case, the value is a very local value. So the local experts have the leading role, and we at the global level just support and connect Flying Labs from their point of view. The key value, as I pointed out before, lies definitely in collaboration and sharing. By having a collaborative network that is open to that, and when they join the network, knows clearly that these are our two key values, it is something, like I said before, where use cases can be easily replicated across geographies, where there can be cross-collaboration on projects and training and conferences, and where there's also can be cross-collaboration and a lot of sharing on stakeholder engagement to learn from each other. How have you done that? What process have you done with stakeholder and community engagement? What has worked for you? What hasn't worked? So I think to have that space and that trusted space of being open to share, not just what works, but mostly actually what doesn't work. I think a lot of value lies in our mistakes and sharing our mistakes with each other. Because if Flying Labs A has made a mistake in one use case, to be able to share that very openly when someone else will replicate that use case and say like, okay, let me not make the same mistake. Possibly they will make different mistakes and this is how they will learn and share back. But it's really by sharing not just our successes, but our workflows, our mistakes with each other, where for Flying Labs, the key value lies. And then the value definitely lies in the local value creation by creating new local markets and economies and jobs, and hopefully also by motivating youth to follow careers in STEM and rethinking, like we saw before, farming practices from their point of view. And this brings me to my last slide. I wanted to close out to just share a bit more on our key learnings and challenges that we had over the past 7 years. So the first one is definitely about choices. So we had some key choices to make when we started that network. And one of the key choices to make was to say, do we want to have kind of a standardized network, or are we going to go for diversity? We chose diversity, and it's not an easy to live choice every day, because it really needs a space where you accept very different ways of doing, and where sometimes it can feel like a chaotic network to some of our WeRobotics colleagues who try to then coordinate, but it is in many ways one of our key success factors too, because that diversity, that many different organizations are part of the network with different backgrounds, so not just 40 cultures, but again, for-profits, non-profits, universities that hold Flying Labs. It's this kind of diversity that is possibly not cannot be put into standards apart from our shared governance, but that then really is diverse and can touch on so many different points. Then the key choice also was to make, do we have a shared governance and trust, or do we want to control? And that comes very much with the network standardization. And possibly the number one question I get on my side from donors or sometimes from partners is, how do you control the network? And we always answer to say, this is the wrong word. There's no control. There's shared governance and there's trust, but you cannot control it. And this is also a key choice to make. And I think that has allowed us to get to where we are today. Then also to have clearly defined shared values at the base. I think that is something we learned along the way. We didn't have that clearly laid out at the beginning. And it really showed us that if we want to keep on growing, we need to clearly define the values. And these values are sharing and collaboration. Whoever is not in this line is possibly not a great fit for our network. And then action needs to be taken. And it is painful to exclude Flying Labs, but we had to do so, but it was important to then really be clear with our values. And once we brought in the values, the next step was then to say, okay, now we need to make these values measurable. How do you tell someone, you're not contributing, or you're not sharing, or you're not collaborating? That's not a fact. So as a next step, we then had to come up with ways of actually defining what does that mean? What does collaboration and sharing and some other topics like ethics and impact actually mean, and to make them measurable. And then to just continuously improve and adapt the network processes behind. So again, the vetting process, that we actually find the right partners and add the right partners to the network that are in line with sharing, collaborating, and that we address the ones who don't and have consequences there. Another key learning was about, again, like sharing and collaboration, nice words to have, but they don't happen by themselves. So that's where we had to invest quite heavily on our side with WeRobotics to have a team of coordinators, which key jobs in many ways is to just do dedicated facilitation for coordination of shared knowledge. Who brings Flying Labs together, who talks to one and talks to another, like, oh, you two should actually speak to each other because you work on similar things and you can learn from each other. Or this is your strength, this is your weakness. Okay, you can learn from each other and help each other. So to really have dedicated facilitation and also kind of the structures for collaboration behind the network. So that definitely is for us the best way to keep the network's knowledge growing, is that collaboration and sharing. But it doesn't happen by itself. And this we had to learn along the way. Then also what became very evident that as WeRobotics, again, we want to provide value, so we need to have a clear value proposition between Flying Labs and what we provide. What does the global organization provide, WeRobotics? What is the role of Flying Labs? Define it, discuss it together, and also keep on improving it. And that is possible. The last point I have here, so this has been a very iterative approach. We use co-creation to get everyone's point of view. We also use a lot of times making mistakes, because I think the best decisions we actually have taken that made us grow, they came out of mistakes. We are taking small steps when you make changes instead of big steps. So when we make mistakes and things don't go well, it's not, I would say it's not critical. But we still learn. So we are going small steps. We possibly could go faster if we would take bigger steps, but it would be also more risk. So we really iterate in small cycles and keep on learning. Things a lot of times don't pan out, and then we just try. And this is how we will continue on our journey to just keep on growing the network. So I hope that these insights gave you a different view on how technologies can be localized. And I'm really interested to hear also if there's some questions. So back to Femi.
Wow. Thank you so much, Sonia. That was amazing, amazing keynote. Thank you for actually revealing to us the power of the local. I mean, we have the expertise. Locally, we can actually tap into the power of the local. And that is actually what I got. Amazing work you're doing with WeRobotics and the Flying Lab Network. Well done. So there are a couple of questions here for you, and I would just like to read them out to you and answer one after the other within the time frame. All right. And thanks so much for actually ending at a proper time. Thank you. So it is fascinating to hear your learning, your key learnings, valuing diversity, trust, and collaboration. It is truly inspirational. Do you think the same WeRobotics model might be duplicated in some other disciplines and sector beyond drones and robotics?
Thank you very much. It is my dream. I say it's our hope. Our expertise lies in drones and data, and that's why we chose this technology. But for us, it was really to have a practical example. Because when we started out, everybody told us that this is not possible. It is possible. It's not an easy journey, you know, it's not a straightforward journey too. It's a lot of learnings on the way, but I think we have had this amazing learning journey over 7 years, and that's why we decided to document all parts of it. And we hope that other organizations will actually adopt it. So we're on a first pilot with a new network that is being created in sub-Saharan Africa on gender and AI. And they're the first ones who want to adopt our model. So we're working with them. We have been working with them for the past 18 months. It's a consortium that is based in sub-Saharan Africa, and they want to adopt our model for their new network. And I think that's, for us, a great exercise to learn how our model can and cannot be adopted. And it is a really interesting exercise again, and a really interesting learning for us to see, possibly we need to document these parts better. Let's go back to Flying Labs and have some learnings here and to work with other organizations. So they're the first ones to do so. When we had the idea of the model, we hope that international organizations will be the first ones to adopt it for the localization kind of approaches, which did not pan out. So it's really interesting to see that actually a sub-Saharan African consortium is the first one to adopt it. But I think as it has a bottom-up approach, possibly it speaks so much more to organization and consortiums in the global south than possibly the ones in the global north. But we do everything we can to motivate other organizations to adopt, possibly not the full model. For some, it might be difficult, but at least get inspired and adopt some parts of it. Even more so when it comes to technologies, because I think a lot of localization of technologies today is very top-down and is possibly not that successful because of these reasons, and is sometimes creating more harm than good. So we hope that these organizations find inspiration in doing things differently.
Thank you so much. Because one of our key focus in this conference is inspiration. So thank you so much for inspiring all the organization. So I want to ask, says I'm a big fan of localization, global and localization. What about hardware? I think there are still only a handful of drone manufacturers. Do you have a plan to perhaps locally manufacture drones in this country where Flying Lab operates? And if I also add to that question, maybe in the next 10 years, what's your vision for the network?
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you for this question. A really good question, actually. Very true. Most of manufacturers today of hardware sit in the global north. So there's actually two aspects to that. Before or while looking at manufacturing in some flying labs, it's already just to look at maintenance. A lot of times just maintenance is an issue, you know, in many ways. It's just to find solutions for local maintenance, because for some manufacturers, it's quite easy to do local maintenance. For some of the systems that are available, it's really difficult. So this is something that we are addressing directly with the manufacturers. To just talk to them already about maintenance and local repair, and making their systems more open for local repair also, because that's really important for sustainability of this type of hardware. And then there's actually some flying labs who are manufacturing their own drones. So we have two members in the network. One is Madagascar and the other one is India. They're part of the Flying Labs, so integral part of the Flying Labs organizations are local drone manufacturers. So there's already these two. Then there's some who manufacture add-ons, and for example, South Africa Flying Labs builds drones. They're kits that come from China, but they're built in South Africa. So there's different flying labs that definitely already have expertise. And it's a discussion that comes up more and more within the network. And the great thing, again, is that diversity that then colleagues that already are on this path can actually share with their other colleagues and help them on their own journey, and just already work with technology that is built in their, many ways, in their continents. So that's definitely a focus. And then looking at our 10-year, so like we don't dream in 10 years, because I think even like 5 years ago, we couldn't have dreamt to be 40 countries today. So we're having a bit smaller ambition. So interestingly enough, we just talked about today our 2-year vision for us, but also for the Flying Labs network. And we actually align very clearly. It's two key kind of elements that really are our strategy and our vision forward, is increasing more and more the sustainability also of local flying labs, for them to be thriving local social enterprises. It's not always easy, it's hard work. So to help them to become more easily sustainable too, that is one. And then the other one is really around growth. So growth, you know, growth in numbers is always nice, but what we actually really are concentrating on is growth in strength. So growing expertise, growing the strength, growing in many flying labs, different kind of sector expertises, the ones who are strong today in one expertise, adding another one, building out their expertises, and that then also helps with sustainability. So I think that's also our, you know, our best way of inspiring kind of other organizations to take this approach, is just to show that you're sustainable. And we have been able to do so over 7 years. And I look back, sometimes I go to the same conferences every year, and nobody took us serious 3-4 years ago, because too young, well, you know, like anyone else, it's about innovation. These people will drop off the earth like all the other kind of, you know, innovation sectors or hubs we've seen. And we're not, we're still here, and we keep on growing. And we keep on growing strong, again, not just in numbers, but in expertise. And I think that is possibly to keep on growing, again, in strength also. And this keep on growing. This is our best bet to change the systems also.
Thank you so much, Sonia. I mean, I just have two more questions, and I would like you to actually answer them succinctly. I know our audience will be very interested in this particular questions. One, how does WeRobotics navigate the complex aviation-related regulations in different countries? Are countries somewhat loosening their regulations? What's the trend? And I will ask the last one. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so actually the answer is we don't, because it's not, it's in many ways it's for flying labs to navigate. What we do is, I talked about, we have internal programs. So we actually having an internal program on civil aviation authority engagement to improve regulations. So we're working with creating a framework for that. So we're working with first flying labs, and then a framework that we can then hand over to flying labs on effective ways of helping to improve the regulations. It will need quite a bit of adaptation per country, but part of our session today in Abidjan was actually, we spent the morning here with the civil aviation authorities. And I think that's it. It's really being able to have frameworks that allow on a local level for flying labs to be active voices and to help improve regulations in the countries. Some countries are doing well, some are not doing so well, so their regulations are very strict. But again, I think the network factor helps a lot, to be able to go to a civil aviation authority and tell, let's look at these 10 countries that are our colleagues, and that's the experience they have. And they can possibly connect you to their civil aviation authorities and have these kind of discussions. That has been something that was very successful and very impactful, I think, over the past 2 years when it comes to regulations, the force of the network.
All right. Thank you so much, Sonia. Just for my last one, and because we're running out of time, during this conference, we have heard stories about the spatial technologies, application across multiple scales, from drones to satellite. I was thinking satellite and drones are somewhat complementary in monitoring agriculture, especially. Do you also train to use satellite data along with drone data or not? Any insights to share with avid geospatial practitioners?
So flying labs really concentrate, I would say, first and foremost on drone data. However, not just in agriculture, but in a lot of applications, the drone data will integrate into satellite data. It will just be one of the data sources that is possibly used then for decision making. And in many ways, drones allow to acquire much higher resolution spatial data that then can be kind of the focus area of what you look at. So some flying labs are working also with satellite data, but most really just concentrate on the drone data and the integration of drone data into other data sources.
All right. Thank you so much, Sonia. What a great way to wrap up our main agenda section and our 3 days together here at the ICTforAg 2023. Woo! So let me bring in. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. So let me bring in my co-host, Jao, back to wrap up things with us. Jao, over to you.
All right. Okay, so yeah, where are we? So yeah, I wanted to just give a quick plug on Learning Network and also Inspire Challenge. So first, Learning Network. So I hope some of you had a chance to visit the Core Lab Expo booth. So this is our kind of first attempt to organize community of practice and supporting for the next 6 months. So in between ICTforAg event, we don't want to lose the momentum of all the exciting connections we made or the lessons learned, and something we want to really continue cultivating throughout the year. So this Core Lab Learning Network will be one of the ways to make that happen. And again, if you haven't had a chance to visit the Core Lab Learning Network booth, you still have a chance to do so after this session. So please be sure to take a visit. And then also we will share more information about this Learning Network Core Lab next week as a part of the post-conference information sharing. So yeah, stay tuned for that. And next, Inspire Challenge. Again, we all heard about the winning Inspire Challenge organizations here today. So in case you missed, we announced 5 Inspire Challengers this morning. Those are Farm to Go program by WFP, World Food Program, and then Inclusion de la Muro. Okay, so this is in Spanish, so I can't really read, but InnovaKit organization working with coffee farmers, and then WOMBEes, that's a women's beekeepers program, and by Let's Indoors Development Program, and Agro Consultants Program, and also lastly, Climate Smart Coffee program by Sprout. So what's going to happen next? So first, I'm sorry, before going there, we also sincerely thank our Inspire Challenge sponsors, the USAID Feed the Future Gender, Climate, and Nutrition Integration Initiative, GCAN, and CGR Initiative Ukama Ustawi, AgriLac Resiliente, and Digital Innovation. With those sponsors, kind of the contribution and support, we are going to provide the 5 Inspire Challengers with human-centered design expertise, data, technical, and also financial support to help them improve women's participation in the respective program. So yeah, we are going to have a chance to bring them back onto the stage in our next event, the next year's event, and we will hear how that went, and then there will be another hopefully inspiring talk next year. So we are quite excited about this. Okay, and yeah, and just lastly, there will be also new challenges as we move into 2024. We haven't quite decided exactly how it will look like, but just stay tuned. And this is also your chance to give us feedback. If you're part of Inspire Challenge program or not, if you want to be part of it next time, give us feedback, and then we will reflect those in our design of next challenge program. And also, if you have a challenge idea, or if you want to bring your idea, if you are representing some organization or funding agency, please reach out to us. We'll be happy to work with you to develop something together, co-design and co-develop another challenge program together. All right, I think that's all from my side. Again, a huge thank you for our partners this week and continued partnership as we move to 2024. Yeah, we also have kind of tentative plans to have multiple ICTforAg Plus event, a locally organized satellite event between now and mid 2024, next 6 to 7 months. So yeah, stay tuned for those announcements. So follow us on like X, LinkedIn, and also our website. And then yeah, as we organize more events, I would love to see our local organizations and local participants being actively engaging with us and global, become the part of global ICTforAg community. Okay, so I think that's really it from my side. So I will give it back to Femi. Take it from here.
Thank you so much, Jao. We're coming to the end of this 3 days conference. Okay, but this is something that is actually worthy of note, that we are at the start of something that will continue into 2024 and beyond. I have heard about Learning Network, Inspire, Challenge, Follow Up, ICTforAg 2024 event, but we no longer need to wait for the next ICTforAg event to be together. We can continue in this community with various programs that we actually have. But before I actually go, I want to actually take a minute to reflect and go back to where we started. And first, we would like to say thank you to USAID as part of the Feed the Future program, DAI, CGIAR, and Dev Global for actually organizing this amazing 3 days global event. Special thanks to the event team who worked tirelessly for the last 3 months, especially for the last 72 hours. Matt, Courtney, Yo, Javi, Garen, Brian, Charlie, Susan, Sam, and Bing, and I hope I'm not forgetting anyone. Please forgive me. It is not a small effort to bring hundreds of speakers and thousands of people together virtually in a live setting. But wait, we have done this. We have near 3,000 attendees, more than 150 speakers from all around the world, well more than 50 hours of relevant and valuable ICT4Ag content to make accessible not only to attendees, but to everyone and anyone globally. While I was privileged and excited and honored to be here this year with you all, I am even more excited for what is to come after this year's event as we move into 2024 and keep this community better connected, engaged year around in a learning network. I'm super excited about the learning network and the community that we are actually building at ICT4Ag. Thanks to my next generation minds that's within the Next Generation Ambassador Program for your involvement this week. Well done, guys. Thanks again to my co-hosts, that's Jao, and all the moderators that helped across sections. Thanks again, ICT4Ag community. The expo and all the content will stay open for the next hours after the close of this section for you to learn more about many great organizations, programs, projects represented here. The Flying Farmer here in Lagos, Nigeria is signing off and encouraging you to connect, continue to learn, work together to solve the world's most pressing information technology matters across agriculture to ultimately serve the next generation and serve the farmers. Thank you so much.